next guest, Apostle Scantlebury, in the waiting room. And I'm going to bring him in because he might also be able to shed a bit of light on the matter to do with information regarding the Freedom of Information Act in Barbados. Good evening, Apostle. A pleasure to have you joining us again this evening.
Well, good evening to you, Reb. It's always good to be here with you. Always good to see you.
And as you can see, we don't have our ladies with us tonight.
Yeah,
it's just all men in the house.
all men of fear tonight. I take it. All men of fear tonight. Mr. Douglas, good to see you as well too. Good to be on the program with you.
Yeah, man. Pleasure. My pleasure.
Yes, sir. How was the fight in Trinidad so far?
Well, it has been an uphill battle. Very slippery slope. but we are managing to get there. We are, I would say, we are very, very much successful in raising the issues, highlighting the circumstances and so on. And people are beginning to pay attention. People are beginning to come forward and speak on social media. I'm seeing a lot of it happening on social media. They have not physically come out of the woodworkers yet. But we are pushing and going in that direction. We are hoping that some of these matters that we are attempting to take to court is going to cause people to come and to be more brave. We will be able to embolden people a little more that there is hope in our judicial system. And, that's where we can find our safe space. Hopefully, we hope that could happen before a totalitarian government takes control, all right? And they control everything, as we've seen attempts being happening, on a daily basis. But like I said, and I was mentioning something to two brothers in a masjid just a couple of days ago, and I told them I always like to leave something, people with something that they can, think about, something thoughtful, something that something of value when I meet with them and I leave them. And I told them, I said, look, listen, we have to be thankful that we have in Trinidad and Tobago some semblance of democracy still, where we can assemble, where we can come together, we can talk about issues, we can raise concerns about certain things that's happening in government. You can question government and so on. We can still do that in Trinidad and Tobago to some extent. All right,
that's because you have an opposition.
Be thankful for that, and let us use that opportunity now to the best of our ability, so that we will be able to protect it and secure our sovereignty. Because if we don't do that now, we are going to lose it. That time it's going to be too late. And I guess the same can be said in Barbados and other parts of the region.
Well, I mean, we've seen our loss of it in Barbados. That's the reality. We've had a government that has a 30 majority in the House. We have a government filled with parliamentarians who represent the party and not the people. We have a government that has just made it impossible for anybody to cross the floor. Now you have to go back to the electorate and go through a by-election type of situation. This is what they're demanding. And they're doing that because they're fearful. That's the reality of it. They're afraid. Because if they were not afraid, there would be no need to implement that type of legislation. You do know that there are people sitting in your parliament who don't agree with some of the things, but will toe the line because they just aren't able to go back through this stuff all over again. And unfortunately, I must say that we have developed very deceptively in Barbados a totalitarian government, where it becomes impossible to ask any questions of any government minister without them getting an attitude and getting on as if you can't question them. And that is unfortunately, Umar, the situation here. But if the people would rise up and protest and let their voices be heard, and not just a few, they would have to come to the table. That's the reality.
Absolutely.
Yes.
There's
one
no
thing,
other way. There's no
one
other
thing
way.
politicians understand. Politicians understand the vote. That's the only thing they
I
understand.
understand numbers.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
understand.
One
that
thing they understand is
vote.
numbers.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
sir.
the only thing they understand, you know. So,
Yeah.
but let me just say very quickly, Omar, because we want to give Mr. Apostle Scantlebury. He has a number of subjects that we want to touch on. If you want to stay on with us, you're welcome to do so. We don't.
I would have to take my bow at least because
But that's fine. That's fine. We
Yes,
really
sir.
appreciate every time you come on with the information, and we are hoping that you will continue to build on this information, that you can educate us and inform us, because I am mindful of the fact that the European Union has had very serious committee meetings with regards to the adverse side effects of vaccines, even though Chat GPT is saying something different. But I have been present in the sense of listening to them online, and also the United States Congress and Senate have had committee meetings with Dr. McCullough, also in European Union, and the frontline doctors. And people think it's just Dr. McCullough. There are over 1,500 highly qualified, experienced doctors who have done peer reviews, some who have had Nobel Prizes awarded to them, who have been pushing back at this matter. But as you know, mainstream media pays no attention. Governments try to shut them down. Even Dr. McCullough, when it was the pandemic period, his license was threatened. And I have a copy of his license at the moment, but his license was threatened during the pandemic to toe the line, and he refused to do that. And so we know that there's evidence there. We know there are many, many, many people that can testify to the adverse effects, many who have been affected, many doctors who can testify to the matter. And of course, you have the whole list of frontline doctors who went through the pandemic who are there. So I want to thank you for being with us tonight. And I would ask you to please continue compiling your information so that whenever we are able to have you back on again, you can continue to educate us and inform us as to what is happening and what are the potential actions that can be taken for the people who have gone through such misery, some personally and some having lost loved ones. So we really want to thank you for that.
Thank you for having me. All right. I hope you all have a wonderful night, very informative night as well. And may you be able to do justice in bringing the information to the people and getting the people to a point where they are able to take that decisive action and stand up and speak out and raise their voices.
Thank you so very much, sir. And we wish you all the best for this weekend. God bless you. And please convey our condolences to the doctor, because I did see the case where his wife she was speaking of the adverse effects. I'm sorry to hear that she's passed away. Please convey our condolences to him and his family from the Marcia Week Show. Thank you so very much. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yes, sir.
Well, Apostle, it's just myself and you for the remainder of the night.
Oh, man.
I understand that we do have some very interesting, I would say, and serious topics to roll through, and we'll try to get through as many of them as possible. I know we want to look at the matter of BIMPay. We want to look at the matter of costs of living and food prices, utilities, solar affordability, and I don't know if we'll get the time to get to the review on the Right Honourable Freundel Stuart speech, which I thought was exposing
incredible
and revealing. Yes, sir. You know, but permit me to just step away a little bit from the focus of the show at the moment and give you the opportunity to speak on these topics that we've spoken of. Of course, you can begin with either one of them, but I think BIMPay is on the minds of many people. I spoke with persons today, and they indicated to me, no, we will not be a part of that. I'm not giving my information, and too much problems and all of that. So let you go right ahead.
Well, I'm going to start with somebody else, but you know, I tell you right now, BIMPay is really making BIMPay. you know.
No pun intended.
No, you know, spoke to, one of my members told me, some of their staff members still have not been paid as yet. You know.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but we'll get back to that. One of the main elements that I wanted to deal with here, as we move into this republic status, a number of things are beginning to raise their heads here in Barbados. And one of the issues that I am realizing is the issuing of titles in Barbados. Recently, we had the president, Mr. Jeffrey Bostic, removed or relaxed his military title as Lieutenant Colonel to take on the title of the Most Honourable. Now, a lot of people may think what I'm going to say as, picky or petty, whichever one they choose. But there are almost 7 to 8 persons here in Barbados already carrying the title Most Honourable. Rev, that title, the most, must belong to one person.
Yes, sir.
You cannot have so many people carrying, and the issue is the governor of the central bank, Mr. Greenidge, he carries that title. Obviously, the situation that he had where he had to apologize in the manner that he dealt with a reporter from, the community college, and then subsequently had to come and apologize publicly. That is not a dimension that anyone carrying the title Most Honourable should end up in. Okay? The fact that you spent now millions of dollars to launch BIMPay and then find out that this BIMPay app has created so many problems, because I've seen the emails from major companies that they sent out to their clients asking them to send in a follow-up email once they use the BIMPay app, because there's no real information coming through to let them know who's actually making the payment. So there's still some things that they need to iron out. So as a person who is the most honorable, this situation has made him look pretty much, as Professor Owen Arthur would say, a boy in the yard. Okay. Now we have the chief medical officer who carries that title as well, and several individuals around the island who carries the title the most honorable. Now, in the word of God, we have the word Elohim. The word Elohim, the Hebrew word, means many making one, or one made up of many. You know that Michael, as an archangel, will never relax his military title. Okay? And if you go to the book of Revelations, chapter 12, where we see this dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, you recognize that they came to war. The dragon fought and his angels fought, and Michael and his angels fought with the dragon. So you see 7 crowns, meaning that is a dimension of royalty, and yet they are warfare. So we have a president that gives up a more powerful title, his military title, to take on a title of most honorable. That spells danger for Barbados spiritually. Okay, you cannot. We have in the Word of God where Moses, when the Lord speaks to him, he says, "I reveal myself to Abraham and to Isaac and Jacob as God Almighty." In Exodus 6, sorry. "But to you I reveal myself as Yahweh," the redemptive version of the Lord, or what we call El Elyon, which is the most high God. So you cannot have 10 gods as the Most High. As a matter of fact, when we read about what we know or who we know as Satan and Lucifer, it says, I will ascend, I will be like the Most High. You know, that's a position that is held by one main deity. So when you have 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 persons in an island carrying the title Most Honourable, you pretty much open spiritual doors in your country for forces to come in to cause major confusion, because that is very confusing. Because how are you going to have so many people in an island? And I know where it comes from in terms of the lodge in the background and all that. I know where all that comes from. But rather, I'm saying the president must be the only person carrying that title.
Well, I want to ask you. I want to ask you this question. Now, prior to our becoming a republic, when a parliamentarian enters parliament for one term, they're referred to as the honourable. I think it's actually, I stand to be corrected if he's a parliamentarian or he has to be a minister. I stand to be corrected. And I'm throwing this out to you simply because I'm wondering if this transition is occurring because we have now become a republic. Because this honourable was your first term. If you served for 2 terms, you became the right honourable.
Right.
You had to serve for more than 1 term, and I think it was as a parliamentarian. I don't think it's as a cabinet minister. I think as a parliamentarian, the Right Honourable Owen Seymour Arthur, he had to serve for 2 terms, so you're not referred to as the Right Honourable. I'm just wondering if their intention in shifting to the Most Honourable is to try to, and I know what you're talking about, the other organization. I know that one very well. But I'm wondering if their shift to try to now rename the position as the Most Honourable has anything to do with the aspect of it becoming a republic, because no explanation has been given that I'm aware of. And this continues to be the problem with this administration. It continues to do things without informing the people, without explaining to the people or anything of the sort. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, from my research, it talks about the fact that this position, this title was given in regards to the Order of Freedom of Barbados. Okay.
Yes.
And it's a part of I think it was the Act in 2019. Came into Parliament with 2019. Then what I have in my notes, it talks also about the Order of Barbados, and this title as the Most Honourable apparently ranks higher than the Order of the Republic, but it is actually, from what is mentioned, it is below the Order of National Heroes. So the point that I am making is that Mr. Bostick's title as Lieutenant Colonel already outranks the Chief Medical Officer, the Central Bank Governor, all of those individuals. So I'm saying, if you really want to have order, you cannot have 10 persons carrying the same title as the Most Honourable. In reality, it is out of order.
Especially when they haven't made any, and don't get me wrong, especially when they haven't made any what should I say, significant contribution.
Pretty much.
Where the country is concerned, because if you look at what I think it's Angel Humble is saying there in this message, that he received the title of the Most Honourable in April of 2022 when he was admitted to the Order of Freedom of Barbados for his leadership during COVID-19. So there is a case, if you want to put it that way, to be made for him. But what would the Chief Medical Officer have done to then merit the same? And you mentioned several others, and I'm curious to hear who the others are, to see what would have justified the change or the reference to them receiving this particular title.
You see, so again, it goes back to show you that there's pretty much no order in Barbados at a very, very high level. And this is exactly what the enemy wants, chaos. And they're trying to figure out how do we fix crime. But they want to deal with it from the point of view of the physical aspects. But what about the spiritual aspects of the country that are out of order, that forces of evil may possibly be using to continue the threat to disturb, our island and what we are doing here as a people. So I think what they need to do is that they need to go back. They need to readdress this issue of how they hand titles out, so that on very high levels in our nation, the order is set, the precedence is set. I don't think we have that right now. And
Is
yes,
there any parliamentary legislative reference as it relates to the particular title being established? I think the national heroes are to some degree enshrined within parliamentary processes. I think so. I do stand to be corrected.
Yeah.
But in other words, is there anything as it relates to our constitution, our legal framework that provides the criteria for the particular individual to receive the particular honor or
But
title?
in my pretty much research here, there's not, in terms of the republic status of Barbados and the fact that we are under an amended constitution, but there's still several things that are being done in Barbados without that constitution, a republic constitution. Okay, so I'm not certain how much weight an amended constitution can carry, because there's so many things that are being done under the amended old constitution and not a republic constitution. So you have all of these things that are happening that are supposed to be going along with Barbados being a republic, but the framework and the foundational elements that supports these things, we're not seeing them. Okay, so there's nothing coming to the public. We're just hearing all of a sudden at the Independence Day and all of the different things, apparently by now, which is going to be another issue with that being downsized, according to what we're hearing. Well, we didn't downsize Carrie Festa. We certainly have no plans of downsizing Crop Over, but we already have plans for November 30th. So here's the point that I want to continue to make, that when you're looking to create order, okay, and Rev, that at a ministry, there's supposed to be a step in order. Okay, the pastor is the visionary of the ministry, and then you have other ministers under him, but at no point do you have people on the same level. Okay, because once you begin to get there, you're going to cause pretty much issues. So how are we referring to the chief medical officer, the central bank governor? How are we referring to them as the most honorable, and we're still referring to the president as the most honorable?
Yeah, but you're almost in terms of the status, if I can put it that way, you're almost equating the status of the chief medical officer to that of the president.
Thank you very much.
Which incidentally would be difficult because it is the president, from my understanding, it's the president that actually appoints these persons. From what my research is showing me.
Okay.
From what I'm seeing in the research, the appointments are made by the president of Barbados based on the recommendation of the government, or in practice, the prime minister and the cabinet. So,
that's crazy.
It's a little contradictory, conflating is the word.
It's crazy, man.
Right word.
It's crazy. because um, how do you make someone pretty much higher than you? His military title, and let's look at this spiritually. His military title is greater than his most honorable title, and and you give up your higher title for a lower title. What sense does that make?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have a president who is a lieutenant colonel, and you forfeit that title to take on a most honorable title when there are several persons within the country who are already carrying that title. I would have never done that. Now, the point that I want to make here is, if you do not have order at the highest level, which is exactly what the enemy forces want, okay? When you do not have order at the highest level, you're going to have chaos at your lower levels. See, and let's go back and help our listeners to understand something that is very, very important. As much as we are seeing what is happening, it is a clear sign that our spiritual order in Barbados is not where it is supposed to be. And I think this is something that they have to make a decision to correct if they want to stem the flow of the operation. All they needed in the Garden of Eden was someone's consciousness to go above Adam. That's all they needed. And you can see over and over and over when you have situations in Barbados where persons are overstepping their boundaries, they're overstepping their authority, they're overstepping, their powers. And we're thinking that we can continue to allow this to happen and it's not going to affect the other areas. That's not true. It's definitely affecting what's going on. And
But
I think
no, sorry. The thing that I'm just here thinking, Apostle. What is the benefit? What is the purpose? I know the lieutenant colonel, which I believe he might have given that up because he's no longer actively involved with the Barbados Defense Force, if it's still named that. I think its name had changed. I don't know if that is as a result of him giving up that involvement. I don't know if it is required, let me put it that way, for persons to relinquish titles when they leave the military aspect of life and assume a civilian aspect of life. But I understand the spiritual connotations, because I think people need to appreciate the fact that, and it doesn't matter for whether you believe what your faith base is. The reality is everything that you see in the natural begins in the spiritual.
yes.
Everything. And even if we look back at life, the formation of life, the creation of this world, it didn't begin in the physical, it began in the spiritual.
There you go.
As a matter of fact, it existed in God's mind before he actually said it.
Yes, sir.
So it is important for us to recognize how important. And for Barbadians, we need to appreciate and we need to embrace it, because in our national anthem is enshrined the very influence of God. We invoke it through our national anthem, and I think it's important for us to pay attention to some of these aspects, because it could have, and it does have. I'm saying could for those of you who may not receive particular aspects, but we hear from what we know it does have. It's the same thing that happened when our flag was buried in Ghana.
In Ghana, exactly.
People would look at you and ask the question, so what's the big deal if the flag go down in the ground? And but it has ramifications.
That's right.
And very serious ramifications. So the point that Apostle is trying to make here are the ramifications of these title shifts.
Yeah.
and what it could mean to us as a country.
Yeah. Rev, even in, you're talking about crime, but even in the area of a gang, nobody, you're not going to have two persons at the helm of that gang. You're going to
But
have one solid person
yeah,
at the helm of that gang.
you spoke of the church, and
Yeah.
even within the context of church ministry, you would have you have several different titles within, like the Anglican Church. You would have their
Yes.
deacons, and you have their reverends, and their bishops and archbishops. You don't have 4 and 5 bishops.
There you go.
I don't know that you have 4 or 5 archbishops. And within the context of the Pentecostal and evangelical circles and non-denominational circles, when we have more than one pastor, there is inevitably the reference of senior pastor. So that, and there's only one person referred to in that terminology.
Right.
There's only one person referred to in terminology of the bishop. You don't have I mean, you could have more than one person as with the title bishop, but that title does not refer to the specific organization within the context of the country. The person may be bishop in another. I'm bishop of a number of churches in Africa. I don't carry that title here in Barbados because I am not a bishop here. But when I go into Africa, in the area where I am appointed as I've been appointed as a bishop there, that holds credence there.
Correct.
And this is what we have to understand.
Yeah, and we're dealing with, you have the presiding bishop. That's the,
correct.
Even if you have other bishops, but the presiding bishop, that's the top guy.
It's very similar to president. Every president in America, even though they step down out of office, carries the title president. Every single one of them. Even though they're not in office.
Yeah, companies have their chief executive officer, and they have their they step in order. They have a hierarchy. But one of the things that I'm seeing here in Barbados, especially with this whole republic issue, is that this hierarchy structure is not sound. Okay, it's not sound. Something is wrong. Something is definitely wrong with the way how these titles are being brandished, to persons that, as you said, have not made any significant contribution to Barbados. And we have to understand the whole idea of putting Barbados on the map through a medium should not be a criteria to make you a person carrying the title most honorable. And this is where we have to come up with the element, like what happened with Rihanna, when folk were saying at the launching of Barbados becoming a republic, it was just sprung on her. We're making her, a national hero tonight,
which is actually the highest order within the context of the country.
Exactly. So all of these are things, and I would say this, and I'm not against Rihanna. I am, I'm happy for what she has accomplished as a Barbadian, worldwide. Very, very happy with that. But my honest opinion, Suki King should have been a national hero way before her. Okay, it's just my opinion. So some people may differ, but Ronald Suki King should have had that position as a national hero for what he did when Barbados was pretty much not known in the draft world. And these are things that, as I said, it's almost like it's who we want. It's come down to who we want and who we feel like giving that title to, and nothing is asked to the public. These are the names of persons that we are contemplating giving this title to. What's your opinion? Nothing like that.
I'm looking at the criteria, Apostle, for the most honorable, and I'm thinking that if the order of national hero supersedes the order of the most honorable, then the
Correct.
criteria for that must be even greater than for the most honorable. And
Yes,
for the
sir.
most honorable, you need to have done extraordinary. And I think this is an important word for people to hear.
Yes, sir.
Extraordinary service.
Extraordinary.
Not just service. Extraordinary. That means beyond the ordinary.
Yes, sir.
Service to Barbados,
Yes,
or
sir.
extraordinary service to the Caribbean diaspora, which means people who are not residing within the Caribbean region, or extraordinary service to humanity at large.
Okay. There we go.
You know, so if that's the
There we go.
criteria for the most honorable, then I would assume, I don't have it to hand, that the criteria for the national hero is even greater than that. It has to be, if the
Has
title
to be.
carries a higher in term order of the table of precedent, if I can use that terminology, it would have to carry a greater component of criteria than the most honorable. You know, so it is unfortunate. I think that I think this is a distraction, to be brutally frank.
Yeah.
I think that the government is doing things, which is always what they do. They create something to distract you, while over on this side they're doing
Right.
things without your knowledge. And unfortunately, I believe this may be one of those things. Not that it's a distraction to yourself, Apostle. I'm talking
No,
about
sir.
from
No,
a
sir. No,
national
sir.
level.
Yeah.
You know, where people are caught up. Oh, you know, with all the paraphernalia and all this stuff. As we are moving into our, this is what, 2022. This will be the 4th year, I think, of us
Yes.
becoming a republic. And I think you would have observed the Prime Minister speaking about scaling back
Yes.
the
Yeah.
celebrations of this year. And we're being told, as a result of, and forgive me if I put it this way, of what is going on in the Strait of Hormuz over by Iran. And
That's so funny.
I laughed because
That's
I
so
didn't
funny.
see any scaling back where Carifesta was concerned
Exactly.
for any reason,
Exactly.
even though I appreciate that I think that there was still global unrest that resulted in increased costs around the world
There you
in
go.
different areas
There you
during
go.
the time of Carifesta, but there was
There you
no
go.
scaling back for that.
No. No, I thought you would talk about scaling back crop over, which is pretty much a swing right now, but there's no talk about scaling that back.
And you know, someone said something to me today, Apostle, and I need to have this verified, because I didn't believe what the person said to me, because I said to them, I think the purpose of having Republic Day on the same day as Independence Day was a deceptive, underhanded move to
Mhm.
try to and let me use the word in my mind, obliterate the legacy of the founding father of this nation,
I
Mr.
heard that.
Right
I
Honourable
heard that
Errol
as well.
Walter Barrow. And the person said to me, but that was forced upon her by the private sector because they did not want another national holiday. And I said, but that is ridiculous. That is a joke. How you mean we don't want another public holiday? You know, I mean,
Right.
I don't
Right.
know. I don't know that companies in this country suffer so dramatically from a day. I don't know. I stand to be corrected, but I don't know that companies suffer so dramatically, having profited so phenomenally already, that they suffer dramatically from the addition of one other public holiday.
Yeah.
I
Well,
couldn't believe it. Do you know anything about that?
no, not from my knowledge. Not from one day. Not from one day. Matter
I
of
mean,
fact,
I would be surprised if the public sector could dictate to the Prime Minister what to do. Which, if they can, that is troubling to Barbados. Very
Well,
troubling to Barbados.
I tell you, America is going to be celebrating their Independence Day tomorrow,
That's
and
right.
I can bet you will see the influence of the business community in their Independence Day parades and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
How they get involved in making it a fanfare and a major event. But here we don't have that. And I think to a point, what the individual said to you about the seeking to interfere with the legacy of our Walton Barrow, that is possible because I outlined, and it is actually online, and maybe Dave can find it, but when they presented the plans for Hero Square, okay, our Barrow's picture was up front, okay? His picture was up front in the plans, looking down Broad Street. Those were the plans that they presented. When the project was completed, Rihanna's face was the one looking down Broad Street, and our Bower is put at the back on what would be the right-hand side if you're coming up Broad Street, on the left if you're coming down. He's at the back. Now you have the father of independence, Hero Square, and he's at the back, and Rihanna's face and Cigar Sobers are the faces that are looking down Broad Street. But in the plans, when they presented the plans to the people, and they're still online, you can find that picture online. Our Bower's picture was the one at the front when they presented the plans for Hero Square. And you can go online and check it out for yourself. So if you would put our Bower's picture at the front when you presented the plans to the country, and then when you actually did it, you put him at the back. That sends a big message.
What are you saying? What are you saying? I just wanted to glaze past this because I want to move on to this aspect of the cost of living and food prices in our country. But when there was all of this conversation concerning the removal of Nelson from Broad Street, I had to laugh. I said, do people not understand? And I understand we're trying to get, cut colonial ties and, the vestiges of colonial. But I said, do people not understand that had it not been for Nelson, we would be speaking French, or we don't get it?
There you go.
If he had lost the Battle of Waterloo, the French would have taken control of Barbados.
Yes, sir.
And we would be speaking French. So
yes,
I think there is it reminds me almost like these stupid, ignorant, nonsensical dumbbells in America who are trying to remove statues of people because they held slaves or whatever, not understanding that you cannot change history by moving a statue.
That's it. Rev, we have something in the Bible. Genesis 1 speaks about two things. Let us make man in our image and after our likeness. And what we have seen this administration done here in Barbados, they have sought to remove the images of colonialism, but they are behaving like
colonial, exactly like the colonial masters.
You see, so they've moved the image, but they've kept the likeness.
So what you're saying is they've moved the image but kept the spirit.
There you go.
That's what they've done.
And a lot of individuals don't seem to understand this, because the way how they're treating our people,
correct,
the way how they relate to our people, it's just like the slave masters. Yes. You don't need to know what's going on. You gave us 30 seats, so we do what we have to do. We don't need to tell you anything. It's correct. Like, I ain't putting a price onto this. What you want to know that for? Are you gonna pay? That's the kind of that's the kind of behavior that you're getting.
Correct. It reminds me of the house slave. You remember that? You remember the house slave? The house slave saw himself above and beyond all the other slaves because he was a master. Right. Even that house slave saw himself beyond the other slaves that worked in the kitchens or cleaned the houses. And for any other slave to attempt to step up there was just and that's what we're seeing. We are seeing a manifestation of the house slave mentality.
There you go.
In our administration to this day.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. Right?
Quickly before, like I said, I want to move to the matter of cost of living and food prices because, I have something on that before I get there, because I want to throw it out to you and get your thoughts. But I came up over the rising by the Water Authority, heading toward the Bussa statue. And I don't know if the song, I can't remember who it is that sang it, A Voice in My Head, It Speaks to Me. I can't remember the name of the calypsonian.
I think that was Edwin Yearwood.
Edwin Yearwood.
Yes, sir.
So I would have to say A Voice in My Head spoke to me. So I would have to tell Edwin that I know what he's talking about. But I did hear this voice speak to me. And this is what it said. The chains are still on his hands. Right. The chains are still on his hands. And I was trying to figure out, what do you mean? And then as I was coming down to the statue, I realized, oh, it's the statue you're talking about. Because with his two hands raised, the chains are still hanging. And the interpretation to the thought was, we are free politically, economically, enslaved mentally.
Well,
that was the interpretation of it.
You're for years, and I've said that, years ago about the whole issue when I did my whole expose on Barbados and the slave trade and the slave movement here in Barbados. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the chains are still on Bussa. The reality is that if they had depicted Bussa with a machete in his hand, or with him with persons behind him that he was leading.
Something like these soldiers,
it would have sent
in America.
Would have sent a greater message to but it's always and I'm cautious of certain persons in Barbados that seem to be used whenever something of this nature needs to be presented, because in Bridgetown in the Heroes Square, there are chains there.
Yes.
Okay? And again, why are the chains still there? Why is it that every time we're trying to present something that speaks to our freedom, that speaks to our mental releases, great man Bob Marley said, you got to emancipate yourself from mental slavery, and I don't necessarily agree with the fact that he said only we ourselves can free our minds, because it'll take God to free our minds.
Absolutely.
But the point that I want to make is that whenever there's something of significance, there's certain people that are seen to be used to create these things, and they always have this idea, find a way to put a chain and get that chain broken in somewhere, because actually in Freedom Square, it's like the shackles are open, which is what they're particularly trying to say there. But again, if Bussa was depicted properly, then we could have sent a clearer message, because if he's the one that is leading the revolt, why are chains on his hands?
There you go. Look at him, and it's one of the most prominent aspects of the statue.
Yeah,
so you see it. It's clear.
So there's always this thing about breaking away, or trident on the flag is the broken trident. You got Bussa, chains are broken. You come into Hero Square, chains are broken. This is symbolic of our breaking away, and we're not going anywhere. So the reality is that I think there has to be a reality, because Gratney Prescott, they talked about the flag of Barbados. He lived in Bristol, England, and in Bristol, England, hopefully if Dave can quickly find a picture of it, in the center of Bristol, England, there is a 30-foot statue. There it is. So you see those curves represent shackles. You see? And I know what that area is. That area that they have as Hero Square is a portal. because if you look on the back of it, the shackles, you'll see it's all brass. And you can see that they have little statues of people who are attempting to pull those shackles open right there. You see? So it's not freedom. It's not freedom if our people are pulling shackles over. Then it's freedom when the master comes and releases you. So the people who depict those things always, I don't know why they always have chains attached to these things. I have no idea why they would do it. But if you're dealing with persons on the side of the demonic, you'll get that over and over and over again. People, when they go there, they should really pay attention. Now that dark area is brass, okay? Or sorry, it's copper. And copper is one of the most widely used metals for electrical circuitry. Okay, so I can tell you that that area right there that they call Hero Square is a portal. And I hope Christians understand what I'm saying. And if they want to challenge me on it, they can do that. I will explain exactly what that is. I'll tell Barbados exactly what that is. And I can prove to you, because even though it's there, you'll seldom find people in it, because that's what it's created for. But you know, over and over again, as I said, in the town center of Bristol, England, there's a 30-foot statue of Poseidon or Neptune, and he has his full trident.
Full trident, that's right.
His full trident, right? You'll find that picture online very easily. He has his full trident, and it is at 33 degrees. It's at a 33-degree angle. Okay, and so when he was there, he did the flag with the blue and with the yellow, and then seeing that trident there and knowing that Spikestown was called Little Bristol, and there was great trade between Bristol, England, and Barbados through Spikestown, or Speightstown as they particularly call it, that had 4 schooners. So said, okay, well, listen, well, we're breaking away from England. There it is. So we're supposed to be breaking away from England. So what would be better to use? A broken trident to suggest that we are breaking away from England.
We're breaking away.
But hey, you know, Neptune, Poseidon has nothing to do with Barbados. It had nothing to do really with the terms of, you know, royalty, even though they have it like that. And then there's an area where you would have an insignia where he's riding on his horses with the trident in his hand. So, and he was living in Bristol, England, when he created our flag and won the competition, and that's where he got it from. So
very interesting.
There's a lot of stuff that Barbadians don't understand. A broken trident does not suggest we have broken away from England. And I keep telling them, you go online, the information is there. Barbados was willed to King Charles when Queen Elizabeth died. He owns Barbados. He owns Barbados. So this whole republic thing is trickery. He owns Barbados. And I was, you know, talking to someone that said, listen, you guys don't understand what's going on. That whole issue in St. Joseph with the land and that massive house that was built there, that was just, that's, the man is a sir. He's one of the king's men. He's one of the king's men. All it took was a letter to King Charles. I've visited Barbados. I've seen a piece of land that I like. And it's just a matter of a letter from King Charles to the powers that be here to release it to him. It's that simple.
Well, you know, the thing is that a lot of this is and this is the plan. You see, a lot is concealed, a lot is hidden, a lot is done in secret. And
exactly.
This was one of the things when I began this show, I began talking about the matters of transparency and accountability. And this is one of the reasons that very often government is not transparent. And I will not apologize for holding their feet to the fire, because in 2018, when they ran for office, they ran for office on the 2 major planks: transparency and accountability, because they accused the then administration of not being transparent and accountable. But I think we have grown to understand the role of hypocrisy within the context of our politicians in Barbados. But Apostle, let's shift on, if I can.
Yes, sir.
Very informative, and someone is saying, that this is very interesting history.
Yes, sir.
Really interested history. That is Sonia Grant. So true. Real interesting history tonight, and I love it. The matters of cost of living, food prices, and utilities. Now, you would have heard the, and I think you were part of our discussion to do with the construction of a data center in Barbados.
Mm-hmm.
And what I have observed in my research is that almost every place a data center has been constructed and is operating, there has been significant increase in utility costs. That is water and electricity. Of course, if there's an increase in those factors, such as we had seen happen as a result of the war in Iran, the Strait of Hormuz, we saw prices go up here. And I believe, I know how supermarket people work. I worked in that industry. Nobody can talk nonsense to me. Things are sitting in the warehouse that you had in before any prices went up, but the prices went up and you applaud was already in the country. I know that.
Yes,
But
sir.
what is also troubling to me, Apostle, I happen to know, and I can show you on my phone, and I had discussions with business people when we were in Colombia, that Barbadian businessmen, the private sector, the merchants within the context of supermarket supplies and purchases, there was a government-led entourage to Brazil. And Brazil is one of the most cost-effective countries in the world at the moment for the provision of food supplies. They're one of the largest exporters of food to the United States. And I know this for a fact because I have made contact and I've spoken about it here on the show on more than one occasion. But what is troubling for us is that we have merchants in Barbados who have accessed cheaper first costs for food.
Okay.
But we do not see that translated into reduced prices on our supermarket shelves. As a matter of fact, if you see an increase in fuel in Barbados, in terms of diesel fuel, gasoline, most instances I think diesel, because most of our communication in terms of food and so on are done by diesel vehicles. You see an increase in food costs within a couple of days. But when the oil prices have been dropping nonstop for the last couple of weeks, yet we see no reflection in a reduction in fuel costs significantly here in Barbados, and no reduction in food prices, and by extension, the cost of living. Because the two major, I think the two major consumers of revenue from persons who work is food and utilities.
Correct. Ralph, can I say something here quickly?
Sure.
All right.
I hope I provoked you.
Yeah. I'm going to say it now. Last month, and I spoke to my wife about it. When I had a vision. I was going to say about it, and we had a conversation. Because I usually share with her whenever I get certain visions. This one I had was I had a visitation from a Chinese angel, and I was taken into the parliament of the Chinese government, and he said, "Come, and I want to show you some plans, and I want to show you some invasion plans that China has, and I want to show you the plans that China has for the Caribbean, and especially Barbados. I need you to know about it." And so I was showing these things. And then he said, now, took me over to the Strait of Hormuz. And when I got there, he showed me Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and the president of Iran with wine glasses in their hands toasting. Okay. And when I came out of that vision, I was talking to my wife, you know, I love history. So I went to find out the name of Hormuz, where that name actually came from. And it says that that name is a Persian name, and it is Ahura Mazda. Okay, that's the original name, Ahura Mazda, and it is translated the wise Lord. So these people are operating with deities, and these deities that they're operating with allows them to make one move that affects the whole world. And what you will see here in Barbados with these people who are using man-made wisdom, just like they did, the insurance companies did in 2001 with the World Trade Center bombing, they took up insurance prices in Barbados, stating that because of that activity, it affects insurance prices here. So they're saying now, because of what is going on there, it's affecting the cost of living here in Barbados. So they're using demonic wisdom to control their people. And that's how I saw where they were toasting, because each time you would have the president come, he will say, we're very close to reaching an agreement. Then they'll go over here to Turkey and Iran and the United States a meeting, and then you have all of this stuff going on. It's a game that is being played on the world. And unfortunately, we have an administration that loves that type of activity, that loves any moment where they can put pressure on the people and make more money off the people of Barbados. Now, here's the thing that we have to recognize. How do you expect your people to be healthy if you're forcing your people to live below their means and eat stuff on the lower levels and eat unhealthily and expect to have a healthy society if you continuously raise gas prices when you know you're not on the OPEC index? You allow the Barbados Light and Power to consistently raise the cost of the electric bill. You continually tax the people. You don't give them an ease. You don't do anything. You don't allow them to get their own solar panels and whatever so that they can ease themselves. So you're obviously putting pressure on the system on a certain level to see whether or not you can quell that level down and then open it up at a higher level. If you notice right now, most government housing projects are pretty much over, but you go to Corverley, you'll see the large investment. You will see what is going on up there. You'll see houses that are 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, 1 million, 1.2, 1.3, 1.5. You see all of that's happening. That area is booming. So you'll see that Barbados is moving towards opening its doors to the people who can afford to come in here. They're building for those people. They're not building for their people, because banks are not going to be interested in a loan for 250,000 or 310,000. They're not interested in that anymore. That's not where the money is. So you can see that's where our government, they're not focused there any longer. So the other aspect is you have the high-end supermarkets that are here in Barbados, and those high-end supermarkets, they're forcing it, and the other smaller supermarkets, like for instance, let's geographically, if let's look at the Jordans change here in Spikestown. We have Jordans, and we also have Eddie's, okay, which pretty much are St. Lucie, St. Peter, St. Andrew, parts of St. Joseph, parts of St. Thomas, that St. Joseph that comes into Spikestown to shop there, because those supermarkets are supposed to be the more economical supermarkets. Okay, so if you look at Jordan's, where Jordan's, there are 4 locations. There's Spikestown, there's Baxter's Road, okay, there's Fairchild Street, I think it's Fairchild Street, and then it's Fitz Village. So you can see that Jordan's branding was, you know, to be located where the average Barbadian can reach them. So when you look at what is happening in Barbados, and you zero in on the assignment of the enemy in Barbados, you recognize, oh, wait a minute, this is something that we need to fix now before we start losing our people that have the right to prosper in their own country, because you have a government that no longer cares about the average person. And I can prove that. I wanted to do a video of it. There's a road in Mile and a Quarter that goes up to Bremerton, and that road was recently fixed. It was recently paved. And I told a gentleman, listen, this road is not for you. You guys benefit from this road, but this road is not being done for you guys. This road is being done for the folk who are coming to Viewmont, which is the high-end, returning national residents that we have on top of Mount Bremerton. So that road goes, and it's paved from the junction by Trimart, and it goes right up to and it stops at the entrance road. It stops at the entrance of Viewmont. So those folk who are driving their, big and flashy vehicles, they pave that road for them. They're not going to want them driving their roads on no crazy. But if you want to know what's going on, you continue on that road and you'll see what the folk who are living in French Village and Fort Hill and Indian Ground, you'll see what kind of road they have to drive on once they pass that area. So we have a government that is clearly demonstrated to Barbados, we're not about the people. We're about those who can come here and spend money with no issues. So,
well, yeah, sorry. Before we run off, because we have just about 10 minutes left on the show, because you mentioned just now, the cost of housing in Coverley. And as I mentioned on the show before, I had someone speaking to me about low-income housing, low-income housing in Lancaster, where he had applied. And the house is anywhere in the ballpark of around $330,000. Okay. Now, it is ridiculous for us to talk about $330,000 as low income. If you go to Lancaster and you look at the houses in Lancaster, there are small 600 square foot homes that persons could have the room to develop. I mean, when I look at even Coverley, a lot of Coverley homes are very small, with zero line mark capability, very little space between the homes, and they're hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now, I understand, however, that one of the challenges facing Barbadians at the moment in terms of, for example, the cost of rentals, because all of this points toward the whole aspect of cost of living, is the Airbnb capability.
Right.
A lot of persons are putting their properties into Airbnb. They're making a lot more money from it, and you can't blame them. You can't quarrel with them for doing that. But what has happened as a result is that the cost of rental to locals has gone up significantly in terms of what you have to pay for a room, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, that type of thing. So government doesn't seem to be looking to address processes that could help to reduce that component in terms of cost of living. And then the other thing, as I mentioned, is the aspect of food prices. I was shocked. I was shocked the other day, walked into the supermarket. I can't remember what I picked up, but I had picked it up just about a week before at about $3.10. Now, again, knowing the supermarket industry because I worked in it for some time, you would expect an increase of $3.10, maybe to $3.50, $3.75. But the particular commodity was now $5.25.
Wow.
That is it's a massive increase.
It is.
It is almost a 100% increase. And it makes me wonder, because at the moment I'm listening to the new Minister of Agriculture carefully to people when they speak. We have lost a lot of land in Barbados that was agricultural land
Mhm.
to housing development. And I listened to the current Minister of Agriculture speaking to the matter of technological, I'm going to put it in my words, technological farming. And I thought to myself, oh, this is another strategy to continue converting agricultural land into housing development, because if I can encourage you to go technological in terms of your agricultural development, then you don't need all the land. We know about how, I understand there was a young man here that set up a container, agriculture container process up in New York, and he's doing very, very well. He's from Barbados,
Mhm.
and he's doing it out of containers. He doesn't
Wow.
have the land in New York like we have here in Barbados to do agricultural development and so on. He doesn't have that, but he's doing agriculture out of containers.
Okay.
And what we are seeing in Barbados is a selling off of this country, a divesting of the asset of the people of Barbados, all in the name of investment. The problem we have is that we're not seeing that investment making its way to the people who need it most.
Correct.
And that is the people at the lower income level of our country.
Correct.
You know, and this is something I believe that we need to pay very serious attention to. You know, I am troubled by it because we are seeing massive loans. I think we're in excess of $8 billion in debt at the moment, Barbados.
Mhm.
And I'm troubled because my children's children are going to have to pay this debt
There you go.
long after this government has left the world.
That's true.
My grandchildren and great grandchildren are going to be saddled with this debt. And Barbados at the moment is not earning anything. And so we are earning through investment. But that investment is at the detriment of our local asset, because the only thing investors can invest into Barbados is land.
Pretty much.
There is
Pretty much.
no oil here that they can come to develop. Well, I don't know what's going to happen now that they found oil off the island. But this is very troubling, and I think it is something that Barbadians need to start asking a lot of questions about and need to start speaking up about.
Yes, sir.
Because it is becoming increasingly impossible. I end on this. Apostle, I had a lady approach me in the Sheraton Mall car park. She approached me for assistance to buy a bottle of bottled gas, a 100-pound cylinder of bottled gas.
Okay.
This lady was not dressed in rags. She did not look like a vagrant. She was not a beggar on the street, as we would understand a beggar to be. She was relatively well dressed with a handbag over her arm and a cell phone in her hand.
Mhm.
Now, I cannot say whether she was being honest or not. I often leave those judgment calls to God, because I've always felt that if you try to steal from me, it is not a very good idea.
Yes, sir.
Because
Yes,
I
sir.
know whose child I am. And when you try to steal from his children, you pay the price dearly. Nevertheless, as I looked at her, and she was actually out of a job. She had been laid off from one of these jobs that help to look after the elderly, you know, that kind of thing. And I asked her, you know, she said she sent out applications to several areas, and she hasn't been able to get through with anything. And I was really troubled, because this is not the kind of person you expect to find in Sheraton Mall car park begging for help. And it
That's
troubled
true.
it suggests to me that there is a growing population of poor people who were once middle income people in
Yeah.
our country,
Yes,
because
sir.
the
Sure.
prosperity of Barbados is not getting down to the people who need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And this is something that I think as a government, the Barbados government, notice I said the Barbados government, not the Barbados Labour Party. The Barbados Labour Party does not exist anymore. The Barbados government does. And I
Okay.
say that within the context of an
Yeah.
election.
Yes,
After
sir.
election is finished, election is finished. Parties don't exist. You're dealing with a government
Yes,
that is
sir.
responsible for the well-being of all the people of this country, regardless of the political affiliation, through the rights of the Human Rights Charter, freedom of association. You cannot
Right.
penalize a man for that. And so I'm really troubled in terms of the cost of living, and I would really like to hear what is the government's plan to reduce the cost of living in Barbados. And please don't tell me anything about scaling back celebrations for independence. That is a slap in the face of Barbadians. I thought it
Yes,
was
sir.
disrespectful, disingenuous, and
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous
Yes,
to
sir.
bring us to that
I
point.
completely agree, Rev.
To bring us
Completely agree with that.
to that point where you are like you're doing us a favor. You know,
Yeah.
I thought it was disrespectful, and coming from the leader of the country,
Oh man.
it does not all go well.
No.
Also,
No.
unfortunately, we have run out of time. I wish we had more time to engage some more of the subjects, even some of those that you. I've just been trying to touch on these things very quickly. I
Yes,
wish
sir.
we had more time even to review the Right Honourable Freundel Stuart speech and some of the constitutional issues. And I'll give you, of course, as we always do, the opportunity for your closing comments in terms of whatever you wish to reference as we wind up this particular night. And it has been an amazing night again. I thank
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Umar Abdullah again as well. I know he's already left us. I want to thank you, Dave, for doing such a tremendous job as always. I want to thank all of you of the loyal opposition for supporting us and sharing and remaining with us throughout these 3 hours. Apostle, your closing remarks.
What I want to say here tonight is, again, we need an administration that will make Barbados work for Barbadians. 3 consecutive terms of this administration has proven that they really do not have the wisdom to lead Barbados into no brighter tomorrow. And the time has come for the people of Barbados who went out from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and voted to make their voices heard. It's time that Barbadians come together and we make a serious determination that we're going to stand up for our country when our government refused to do that, to make things better for our people. And I'll say this, and again, it's my opinion, the time has really come for Barbadians to get together and ask for this administration to resign. That's my point. I have to say that because I do not see Barbados going into any brighter future under this administration. 3 consecutive terms, 330 loves, and Barbados at the end of each 3.5 years is in a worse condition than before. They asked for another time to continue the work that they started, but hey, as I said, BIMPay is making BIMPay, and that's where I want to close tonight, sir.
Well, I certainly want to thank you for taking the time again to be with us. I really do appreciate you dedicating yourself to these Friday night shows. Unfortunately,
Yes,
we were unable to have Carolyn and even Maxine join us tonight. And I hope there's nothing wrong with either one of them, but we wish them well, and we do wish them a great weekend. And we want to thank, again, Dave. And I personally want to thank Marcia for entrusting me the responsibility of hosting this show on Friday nights.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I can tell you that it it has been a challenge. Accumulating the research and the
Yes.
information
Yes,
so
sir.
that we can do what she has always expressed on this show, Emma: educate, motivate, mobilize, and agitate.
Yes,
And
sir.
I hope and able again in this session. We haven't been able to take the people's voice, so to speak, Facebook comments and YouTube comments. We've been putting some of them up there, viewer
Yes.
questions and so on. But for the love of our country, we are going to continue to agitate, educate, mobilize, uh, motivate, and
Motivate
agitate.
and agitate.
Uh,
Yes, sir.
and we are the official opposition. We are the
Yes, sir.
loyal opposition in Barbados. And I saw one of the ministers this afternoon in a function that I was in, and I said to him, "Don't be upset with our challenging of you and of your colleagues. Don't be upset. We
Right.
have a right to ask you questions. It doesn't mean I don't like you.
Right.
It just
Exactly.
means that I love my country more than I like you."
Yes, sir.
So
Yes,
we
sir.
ask the questions, we put it to the government, and as I can tell what Mr. Umar said earlier. We have invited, I personally have invited government ministers and officials to come on the show, and let's have a discussion with the people. And to date, not one has accepted it. So we will leave it at that.
Yes, sir.
Again, Apostle, thank you so very much for being here. Your insights into so many aspects are so critically important. We
Yes, sir.
do want to understand, folk, as we close the session, that
Yeah.
everything you see physically has its origin in the spirit realm.